First off, I just want to say thank you all, and good morning. I'm Victoria Bellucci. I am here today to share my personal experience with concussions from playing soccer and their impact on my life. It is vital to further educate the public on the emotional and physical dangers of concussions, and I'm honored to have been invited here to share my story in hopes of raising awareness of concussions and symptoms alike. Many things changed throughout my life, but my passion for soccer has stayed constant. I started playing soccer when I was just 4 years old, and when I was 8, I joined my first competitive travel soccer team. When I was 14, I walked onto the soccer field of Honeytown High for the first time as a freshman, unaware of how my life would change in the years to follow. In 4 years, I had the honor of leading my team to 3 state championship appearances, 4 regional titles, 3 conference championships, while being awarded individual honors like Athlete of the Year and receiving a scholarship to play Division I collegiate soccer. But the other side of my story began in my sophomore year when I went up for a header during a game and got my first concussion. Thinking it was only a headache, I played in a game the very next day, a mistake that many athletes make. A fall during that game caused another severe concussion and started my battle with head injuries, which I'm still fighting to this day. During the next 2 years, I experienced 4 more concussions, which altered my ability to perform on the field as well as in the classroom. Simple tasks like focusing on my assignments, remembering class schedules, and socializing with my friends became increasingly difficult. It was also emotionally draining trying to learn how to live with the everlasting impacts of my concussion and to adjust to a life without soccer. Concussions have drastically altered my life, but the experience has also paved a new path for my future and taught me not to take anything for granted. Stories like mine are way too common, which is why I would like to thank President Obama for shining a light on concussions and the severe impact they can have on a young athlete's life. With that being said, I am more than honored to introduce our next speaker, the President of the United States, Mr. Barack Obama.
We're so proud of you. Good luck. When you, as a dad, Tori's parents are here, and I have to imagine they are awfully proud of this remarkable young lady, and we really appreciate you taking the time to introduce me. I want to welcome everybody here to the White House. I want to thank members of Congress who are here. We've got leaders from America's sports and medical communities, especially young people here like Tori, who did such a great job sharing her story today. You know, all across the country, there are millions of young athletes just like Tori who spend their weekends and summers on baseball diamonds and soccer pitches, and they put in extra practice so they could make the varsity or maybe even earn a college scholarship. Most of them are not as good as Tori was at her sport. I certainly wasn't, although I had the same enthusiasm. And for so many of our kids, sports aren't just something they do, they're part of their identity. You know, they may be budding scientists or entrepreneurs or writers, but they're also strikers and linebackers and point guards, and that's a good thing. First of all, the First Lady thinks everybody needs to move. And obviously there's a huge public health interest in making sure that people are participating in sports. But sports is also just fundamental to who we are as Americans and our culture. We're competitive, we're driven, and sports teaches us about teamwork and hard work and what it takes to succeed, not just on the field, but in life. And I was a basketball player, as I said, not as good as Tori was at soccer, but I learned so many lessons playing sports that I carry on to this day, even to the presidency. And still, when I need to relax and clear my head, I turn to sports, whether it's a pickup basketball game, and I'm much slower than I was just last week, or more sedate pastimes like golf or, watching SportsCenter. And more than that, as a parent, Michelle and I have always encouraged our girls to play sports. One of the greatest transformations, I think, in our society has been how young women have been finally given the opportunity because of Title IX, and now you see just unbelievable women athletes who are getting the same exposure and experience and outlets for sports all across the country. And Malia and Sasha are part of that generation. They take for granted, of course, we're playing sports. And they played everything from soccer to basketball and tennis and track. So sports are important to our life as a family, just like they are for families all across the country. The reason we're here today, though, is all across the country, parents are also having a more troubling conversation, and that's about the risks of concussions. There's a lot of concern, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And as Tori's story suggests, concussions are not just a football issue. They don't just affect grown men who choose to accept some risk to play a game that they love and that they excel at. Every season, you've got boys and girls who are getting concussions in lacrosse and soccer and wrestling and ice hockey, as well as football. And in fact, the Center for Disease Control reports that in the most recent data that's available to us, young people made nearly 250,000 emergency room visits with brain injuries from sports and recreation. 250,000. That number obviously doesn't include kids who see their family doctor or, as is typical, don't seek any medical help. Before the awareness was out there, when I was young and played football briefly, there were a couple times where I'm sure that ringing sensation in my head and the needing to sit down for a while might have been a mild concussion, and at the time you didn't think anything of it. The awareness is improved today, but not by much. So the total number of young people who are impacted by this early on is probably bigger than we know. Now, I say this not to scare people. We want our kids participating in sports. I'd be much more troubled if young people were shying away from sports. As parents, though, we want to keep them safe, and that means we have to have better information. We have to know what these issues are. And the fact is, we don't have solid numbers, and that tells me that at every level, we're all still trying to fully grasp what's going on with this issue. Last fall, a comprehensive report found that there are too many gaps in the understanding of the effects and treatment for concussions. Researchers are still learning about the causes and consequences of these injuries. Communities are wondering how young it is to start tackle football, for example. Parents are wondering whether their kids are learning the right techniques or wearing the best safety equipment, or whether they should sign up to have their kids participate in any full contact sports at all. We've got some outstanding scientists here today, like Francis Collins, the head of the NIH. There may be tests that at some point we can do to see if there is a particular susceptibility to concussions. Some people's brains may be more vulnerable to trauma than others are. We don't know that yet, but there may be some evidence that is worth exploring. So with all these questions swirling around, as a parent and as a fan, and in discussions with a lot of other parents and fans who happen to be in this White House, we decided, why not use our convening power to help find some more answers. And today we brought together the president of the NCAA, the MLS commissioner, this senior leadership from the NHL and U.S. Soccer and the NFL and the NFL Players Association. We've also got some of the nation's foremost brain experts. We've got doctors who work with kids every day from all over the country. We've got leaders in Pop Warner and Little League and Under Armour and ESPN participating, and we've got members of Congress like Joyce Beatty and Tim Bishop and Bill Pascrell, all of who've taken a great interest in this. And because we're all here and are looking for information, even if we may not agree on everything, the one thing we can agree on is that sports are vital to this country, and it's a responsibility for us to make sure that young, talented kids like Tori are able to participate as safely as possible, and that we are doing our job, both as parents and school administrators, coaches, to look after them the way they need to be looked after. That's job number one. The good news is, across the country, people eagerly signed up to participate here. They recognize this is an issue that is worth paying attention to. We've seen all 50 states pass laws requiring concussed athletes to get a medical clearance before they return to play. Folks from U.S. Hockey banned checking before 12 years old. In March, the NFL donated $45 million to USA Football for their Heads Up football program, which emphasizes coach training and player safety. On our part, this administration, the CDC has spearheaded a public awareness campaign for parents and athletes and coaches and school staff called Heads Up, and you can check it out at cdc.gov/concussion. That's where we've compiled a lot of the best information available for parents. And while the number of concussions reported among young athletes has risen over the past decade, one reason is likely because players, coaches, and parents better understand symptoms of these injuries. Still, there's more work to do. We've got to have better research, better data, better safety equipment, better protocols. We've got to have every parent and coach and teacher recognize the signs of concussions, and we need more athletes to understand how important it is to do what we can to prevent injuries and to admit them when they do happen. So, right, we have to change a culture that says, you suck it up. Identifying a concussion and being able to self-diagnose that this is something that I need to take care of doesn't make you weak. It means you're strong. At the same time, I want to point out that this is not just a matter for athletes. You'll notice this big guy here, Ray Odierno, who is not only the leader of our Army, but also is somebody who plays football, who I don't know if he still plays, although he could. But as a leader of our armed forces, he sees the effects that injuries have had on brave men and women who serve in uniform, and all of us who cares about them. That's why Ray's here today. And I've seen in my visits to wounded warriors, traumatic brain injury is one of the signature issues of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The thing is, the vast majority of mild traumatic brain injury cases in the military occur outside deployment. So even though our wars are ending, addressing this issue will continue to be important to our armed forces. And as part of a new national action plan we announced last year, we're directing more than $100 million in new research to find more effective ways to help prevent, diagnose, and treat mental health conditions and traumatic brain injury. Because the more we can learn about the effects of brain injuries, the more we can do to help our courageous troops and veterans recover. And that obviously gives us more information about our kids as well. Today, by the way, I'm proud to announce a number of new commitments and partnerships from the folks in this room that are going to help us move the ball forward on this issue. The NCAA and the Department of Defense are teaming up to commit $30 million for concussion education and a study involving up to 37,000 college athletes, which will be the most comprehensive concussion study ever. And our service academies, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, are all signed up to support this study in any way that they can. The NFL is committing $25 million of new funding over the next 3 years to test strategies like creating health and safety forms for parents, and they're building on the program piloted by my own Chicago Bears to get more trainers at high school games. And the NIH is announcing the next step in this partnership with the NFL. They're dedicating $16 million of the NFL's previous donation towards studies and clinical trials to examine the chronic effects of repetitive concussions. The National Institute of Standards and Technology will invest $5 million over the next 5 years to explore the development of lighter and smarter and more responsive materials for protective equipment. And I want to signal out the New York Giants chairman, Steve Tisch, who's here and is donating $10 million of his own money to expand the brain sport program at UCLA to prevent, study, and treat concussions and traumatic brain injury in youth. So all these new commitments are terrific, and we want to thank everybody here for participating. So just to wrap up, so you can hear from people who actually know what they're talking about, these efforts are going to make a lot of difference for a lot of people, from soldiers on the battlefield to students out on the football field. Take the Levine family from Rockville, Maryland, who are here today. Where'd they go? There they are right there. Cheryl, Jason, Levine have 3 boys who, when you look at them, you know right away they're brothers, Isaac, Sydney, and Reuben. They have loved ice hockey since they were really young. But when he was 7 years old, Sydney suffered a pair of moderate concussions on the ice. A few years later, when Isaac was an 8th grader, he suffered a more severe concussion in a game. After the injury, both boys had headaches. They started struggling in class. They started acting out. Isaac's concussion even kept him out of school for a while. And as you might imagine, Cheryl was horrified, as she put it. You only have one brain. That's a good point. And you want to make sure that you're treating it right. Fortunately, with the help of their doctors, both boys' health and behavior improved, and Sydney was back on the ice 10 weeks after his concussion. He's hoping to play varsity next year as a freshman. And last winter, Isaac played forward as his high school team won the state championship. Now, Cheryl and Jason could have pulled their boys out. It was such a scare, and had their doctors recommended it, that's what they would have done. But they knew that just like millions of kids across the country, kids love their sports. So Cheryl and Jason educated themselves on the issue, and with their doctor's blessing and the support of the coaches and teachers, they're encouraging their boys to lace up those skates and get out on the ice. And as Cheryl said, my kids aren't going to go on and play in the NHL, but I hope they know that, by the way. But what I'm worried about is getting them through their teens while having fun and building confidence and doing the things they want to do, obviously within certain limits. That's some good parenting by Cheryl. And that's what today's about. It's to give parents the information they need to help their kids compete safely. Let's keep encouraging our kids to get out there and play sports that they love and doing it the right way. That's not a job just for parents, but it's a job for all of us, and that's why the public-private partnerships like these are important. In a few minutes, I know that many of you are going to take this discussion a step further with this panel of experts, moderated by Pam Oliver, which we're very grateful for. But I want to thank all of you for coming here today, for your contributions to our kids' future, and most of all, I want to thank the young people who are here, particularly Tori, for highlighting why this issue is so important. We're really excited. And by the way, Tori, although is not going to be playing soccer when she goes to college, she's graduating, she does intend to stay involved in the sport, and I understand is going to be doing some coaching of some 4- and 5-year-olds this summer. And she's going to pass on some of the knowledge, hard-earned knowledge that she's learned, and that's why we know she's going to be a terrific success in whatever she chooses to do. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, as we begin the panel discussion, I want to start with you, Dr. Joya. We hear mild concussion a lot. What does that mean? It seems like that would give people a false sense of security, that it's just a mild concussion. Various degrees of concussion we're talking about, and that's a lesser one. But I'm sure that would concern you.
The term mild concussion is probably a misnomer. We don't necessarily grade the severity of concussion. As we say, concussions are like snowflakes. Everyone is different. And what's most important is that we understand the nature of these brain injuries for every individual and manage them specific to that individual and try to promote their active rehabilitation toward recovery.
And just sticking with you for just 1 second, what do you think from what we're hearing today and the concussion debate that's been going on? Parents could be terrified, confusing information. In its simplest terms, as concussions go, what do people need to understand? Just what is the bottom line as far as concussions go, what their kids need to know, and these mom and dads need to go away with from today?
Yeah, I think the president set the groundwork here importantly, basically saying that, number one, we want kids to be active. We want them to be involved in sports for all of the benefits that it offers. But at the same time, parents are going to be concerned about what they're hearing, and they can be in charge of this issue. You learned about the CDC website and all the good materials that are on there. We recommend 6 action steps that parents and coaches take to help them gain control and really feel confident that their kids are going back into these sports or going into the sports with minimized risk. Number 1, they have to learn how to recognize a concussion. So coaches and parents can actually go on the CDC website. They can do the videos. They can pull down the various kinds of materials that we have. So we have some number 2, nice tools available. So get those tools. That's an important action step. You can use the smartphone app that we developed called Concussion Recognition and Response. That walks you through what you're looking for. Number 3, you need to know what those danger signs are. Most of the time, concussions do not produce the more devastating neurologic effects, but you want to be aware of those things like, a worsening neurologic pattern, and we give the guidelines for that. It can be headaches that are unremitting. It can be numbness and weakness. It can be a more extended loss of consciousness. It can be a variety of things that we call our 12 danger signs. But what we really want parents and coaches to know is if they suspect any of these kinds of issues, they've got to protect kids, pull them off the field. And so in the CDC, we say, when in doubt, sit them out. If you suspect, you must protect, right? And but then we need to move forward. And our state laws require that. We need to, number 5 and 6, support kids' treatment. One of the things that's toughest as you're recovering, and the Levine families and the other families that we know that are here today, know that it's a tough road in recovering from this injury. And having pressure from your teammates or from your coaches or from your teachers to get better, you look fine, is not the way to be supporting kids in their treatment. We know that, again, every injury itself is individualized. Understand that and support kids' recovery. So the bottom line is there are 6 action steps we can take ultimately to support kids and for parents to feel comfortable that they can be in charge of this concussion issue.
Dr. Comstock, from the area that you work in with high schools and data that you're collecting, what are you seeing as far as that goes?
So many of the things that Dr. Joya just said, we like to reiterate. Unfortunately, a lot of the information that does come out is a little bit scary for parents. We know that concussion rates have increased significantly over time.
Now, if I heard that as a parent, I would say, we'll find something else for you to do.
Right, and it is scary for parents. So we want to make sure that parents hear the numbers that are a bit scary, but put them into context. The negative long-term health effects of an inactive lifestyle, obesity, heart disease, diabetes, are still much greater and much more concerning than the very small likelihood that any individual child out there will have a very serious sports-related injury. So we just want people to hear the numbers, be aware of them, but put them into context and take steps to take care of their kids in light of those numbers.
At what point did you reach a point that you were able to put a number of resources into the data that you were collecting and, funding and all of that? How do you go about that endeavor?
Yeah, so professional sports have had data for a long time. The NCAA has had an excellent surveillance system for the last 3 decades. It's really only been over the last 8 years that we've had a national high school sports-related injury surveillance system, a system that's used by policymakers, including the National Federation of State High School Associations. Right now, unfortunately, we know virtually nothing about youth younger than high school age because we currently do not have a national surveillance system for sports and recreation-related injuries in kids younger than the high school age.
And why would that be?
Oh, that's a good question. It always comes down to funding. The Institute of Medicine report that the president referenced actually did state that one of the big weaknesses was a lack of data because of lack of surveillance, and they in fact tasked the CDC to come up with a plan for implementing a large-scale surveillance system to collect this information both in younger populations and also in older populations outside of the school setting. We know quite a bit about high school-related sports injuries and collegiate-related sports injuries, but not as much about recreational injuries and other physical activities outside of the school setting.
Because children start sports, at an early age and often recreationally. General, what do you think needs to happen to get sort of these young, tough athletes, and also members of the military to take place in understanding that they don't have to be so macho, that
Yeah.
they have to, bring it to someone's attention that they're not well.
Yeah, so Pam, if I could, there's 3 points I'd make, one of them being that, the last one will be that one, is the president mentioned it, but physical fitness and leadership is a key component that we look for in the military, and we believe that sports grows physical fitness and leadership better than any other activity. So we think this forum is important so parents begin to feel comfortable that they can allow their sons and daughters to participate in these sports. Because for us, unfortunately, the United States is on a downward spiral in obesity and physical fitness, and we got to turn that around. And so the important part of making parents comfortable that they can have confidence that we can monitor this is really important. It's important for us in the military. Secondly, today we have 200,000 soldiers with some level of TBI. 84% of those are non-combat related. And so it's important for us to identify what we do. And we've been studying this now for a long time. We've set up protocols, we have done analysis and studies, and we want to be able to share that with all of these other entities. We've entered in a partnership with the NFL, with the NCAA, and I think we want to move in and work helping the younger athletes as well.
We'll
And
get together later.
yeah, and then finally, the biggest problem is making them come forward and recognizing that it's okay. Embodied in what we do is we try to instill a mental toughness and a physical toughness that actually plays against someone coming forward. And this is one of the things we've worked very closely with the NFL because they have the same problem. And so we have to make sure that the environment is created that it's okay to come forward. Because first of all, it's correctable with treatment. We can get you back out there. You said it perfectly, and talk about the hockey. Within 10 weeks, they were able to get back out there. But if you don't address it right away and don't realize it, it could affect you for a lifetime. And so it's getting them to understand that. And it is a problem for us, and it's something that we face every day. So it's about education. It's about people coming forward. That's why we think the NFL can help us, and other athletes who are people recognize, say, I'm willing to come forward. I'm willing to identify this as a problem. It's important to get it recognized early on. It's important to get the appropriate treatment.
The NFL in particular has been in the forefront of this concussion issue. They've taken a lot of heat because of concussions, but in your dealings with the NFL on this, you guys seem to have formed a real partnership because of the things that you have in common. Long term, where do you see that going?
Well, what I hope is, of course, we're now doing, we're sharing research that we've done. We hope that we'll continue to have open discussion. For example, we now have discussions going around to different NFL cities with each NFL franchise locally talking about this problem and talking about this subject where we have soldiers, NFL players talking about concussions, talking about the impacts of it. So we want to continue to expand this. I think with the NCAA, we'll be able to expand this further, working with the universities that are around the country and talking about it. And I think people then get a chance to see it and understand that there are things that can be done that can help us. Because, again, I worry that we walk away from sports. I tell them, personally, I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for sports. I would not have been given the opportunity to go to the United States Military Academy if it wasn't for sports. And so for me, it's important that we give young people that opportunity, and we got to provide them, the parents, the confidence that they will be taken care of, no matter what sport they might play.
Taylor, you have a date, the time that your life changed. Tell us about that.
Before I get into that, I'm just curious who did the seating arrangement. I'm between a general and an all-pro linebacker, so I'm a little curious how you got stuck between these two gentlemen. Pam, before I get into that, I always start any kind of concussion talk with this analogy. It starts with mild concussions. Have you ever heard the term mild diarrhea? No. Either you have diarrhea or you don't. And that's why I think, Doc, in all seriousness, getting rid of the term mild concussion is a huge, Huge discrepancy. August 30th, 2008, my life changed forever. Tori, I know you'll love this story. David Beckham was in town in Boston and Landon Donovan. We were playing a game. My family was there. I came in for a cross. Goalkeeper punched me in the head. For the next 8 weeks I played, and my life changed forever. I haven't worked out for the last 6 years. The moment I walked into the room, bright lights, small headache, can't go to movie theaters. And then I was next door neighbors with Junior Seau. And for about 18 months, I sat in a dark room and tried to fight any which way I could. One of my doctors is here, Dr. Robert Cantu, and we dealt with any type of symptom you can deal with. I've dealt with it, whether it was alcohol abuse. I did that. Junior Seau and I would go to dinner every Monday, Tuesday night, and I missed my game. And he said, buddy, what's wrong with you? And LeVar would tell you everything was buddy with Junior. And I said, Junior, I've got a headache. I can't play. And he looked at me and he said, buddy, I've had a headache since I was 15. A year later, he drove his car off the cliff. I texted him. I called him, never heard from him. 6 months later, we all know he took his life. I tell you that story because that day, I made a goal that I was going to beat it. I'm going to beat post-concussion syndrome. I'm going to be an example for Tori, the Levines, that we can beat this. But in order to beat this, we all have to come together. The other part of this story was starting the foundation, thinktaylor.org, is I also came apart and really became a forefront, and MLS Commissioner Don Garber's here, U.S. Soccer, Dan Flynn. The funny thing is we're all talking about football and hockey. All the kids, boys and girls, are playing my sport. And so what we need to do, and when I say we, it's all of us in this room, but predominantly the soccer community, we need to make sure recognition and rehabilitation of concussions is spot on. Because too often I'm hearing, my kid's not going to play football anymore, we're going to play soccer. We've got just as many girls playing soccer as we do boys. And that is where I think MLS, U.S. Soccer, there's a summit this fall, they're attacking it head on. But I think the biggest thing that I can do, along with all of us up here, me in particular, is tell my story. Because I really saw all aspects of post-concussion syndrome, and I saw a buddy of mine take his life.
LeVar, is there anything that you know now that you wish you knew then when you first started playing football? You have children. Is there anything that you would have done differently? Or did you play the sport because you loved the sport and it became everything to you?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question because that's the question that's being asked of a lot of guys who have played this game. I played linebacker in the National Football League, played in the NCAA, played high school ball, and played youth league football, played Pop Warner football. Do I look back on my career as a physical player? And I see one of my former teammates sitting out there. We played hard, and I don't have any regrets. I don't look at any point in time in my career where I say to myself, I wish I would have done differently. But what I will say is I was a product of great coaching. And I think that's something that has been a part of the conversation from Ms. President and from everybody who has spoken thus far, is that it's more about how we approach these things. I can't speak to the scientific part of this, and nor would I try. But what I will say is from a parent standpoint, from a former player standpoint, from someone who is deeply just entrenched in figuring out ways of being proactive, I would ultimately say it is about the education that leads up to these things, because ultimately you can't walk through life looking at every single thing that is going to impact you health-wise. What you can do is you can live your life, and you can be as prepared and as knowledgeable about it as possible. You know, I didn't ask to have a wounded warrior father who was never able to run with me one day in my life, but yet we figured it out. and we figured it out at a high level. So I don't think that approaching the game, knowing the things that I know now, I knew Junior, I knew some of these guys that are dealing with these issues based off of these head injuries, and some of these things are just not, it's not avoidable. And I don't think that the discussion is to totally avoid it, because I don't think it is avoidable, Pam. I think we have to be educated in how we treat, how we track these things, and be more knowledgeable about our approach, because the reality of it is, and it's been mentioned, do you sit on your couch and replace a football helmet with a remote control? Do you replace kicking a soccer ball with Doritos and if anybody likes Doritos, that's not personal. But do we replace our activities with a non-active America based off of fear? You know, I wasn't raised to live in fear. So when I look at my career, I was fortunate enough to be taught how to tackle correctly.
Correctly. That has a lot to do with what you do with Heads Up.
I hit really hard, guys, when I played. I was what you were called a hitter. There were tacklers and there were hitters, and I was a hitter. And you know, we had interviews, but I knew how to hit. If you saw my equipment, my pads were built a certain type of way. Before I made impact, I would tuck my head. I'd tuck it almost like a turtle, and I made contact. And when I made contact, my head was stably situated within my pads. There's an art to making contact. And I watch the game now from the NFL level on down. You see guys dropping their heads. You see guys doing it in a way, and not just tackling. It's blocking. It's all kinds of different things that go on in a full contact sport like football, that if you had the education, if you were taught properly, if a coach took the time when you were little to teach you it, it wouldn't be as big of an issue. I had 4 concussions that I know of when I was in the National Football League, and one of them came from a direct tackle. And that's because I was running as hard as I could, and it happened. The other 3, I got kneed in my head, Pam. I'm on the ground. I got kneed in the head, and the other 2, I fell and hit my head off of the ground. Now, I don't know how many people in here have played in the National Football League, but how many of us have fallen in our lives? We fall. Injuries happen. So I don't subscribe to being afraid. You know, so I just think it's more about the education. And you mentioned Heads Up, working with Heads Up, the program. They're placing a premium on being proactive. You know, I'm working with Under Armour. GE is working with Under Armour in the National Football League. There are programs that are so proactive in approaching the study and the understanding of these injuries. But let's be clear, that's science. I don't know how many scientists are in this room, but I know there's probably more parents in this room than scientists. Prepare your children to be able to live. Prepare them to be able to go after and approach their dreams. Don't let your fear keep someone from what their dream may be. And I think that's ultimately humanizing the fact that we can talk all this scientific talk about what's going on, but I wanted to play football as an 8-year-old. And I looked at my mother and I told my mom, I want to play football. I love playing the game. I wanted to play football. And she let me play. So let's just be educated, you know, because there's going to be something else. It's always going to be something else. I think we know that. It's always going to be something else. So let's just approach it the right way. Being scared is not the makeup of who we should be or what we are. Being educated and ready is what it should be.
General, should people and parents, moms and dads, if they had been in this room, heard this conversation, could they rest assured?
Well, I think, first off, I think we have to do more work yet. So, you know, I mean, I think I agree with what LeVar said. I mean, you can't be afraid, but we got to help them to reduce their fears. And so, You know, we in the military, we have collected lots of data, you know, whether it be very traumatic brain injury because of combat operations or others, you know, so it's important for us now to understand what is that saying, what is and then conduct research and figure out how do we best predict. And once we predict, what are the things we can do to ensure the safety of the young people as they go through this. And I think that's what we have to be able to share across the broad spectrum of individuals that were involved here. And I think that will help them then to ease their minds. You know, as a parent, you know, we're all parents, a parent of 3 children who all played sports, you know, back, you know, they're older now. I didn't think much about concussions, frankly. I probably should have been. But I think now, because of the awareness of it, it's important now that we really focus on working to provide parents the ability to understand what they can do, and there's a safe way to go about doing this, and there's treatment, and that's all the most important things that we need to do, because we want them not to be afraid. We want them to go out there and do whatever they might want to do, and that's why I think your example could be a great one as you deal with this, as you move forward.
Dr. Comstock, 2, 3 concussions, we've heard LeVar, for young kids, high school kids. Is that common?
No, actually, luckily, our data shows that the vast majority of concussions sustained by high school athletes, it's their first concussion ever, which is good. It's less than 10 to 12% of the concussions that we capture in our surveillance system that are recurrent concussions. Similarly, most of the concussions, the symptoms resolve very quickly. Over 80%, all symptoms resolve within a week. It's less than 1% where symptoms are still persistent a month later.
Do they know the symptoms enough to describe them, to understand them, to?
Yes, you know, an athlete knows how they feel. Yeah. An athlete knows to tell the athletic trainer, their pediatrician, their physician. Over 90% of the athletes with concussions present with a headache. Yeah. We know now, because of surveillance data, that some of those myths we used to have are wrong. You don't have to be knocked out to have a concussion. In fact, less than 5% of all the athletes have loss of consciousness. Less than 10% have transient amnesia. But we see about 1/3 with things like sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, some of the things that were described previously.
Mm-hmm. I recall all of those things in my unfortunate encounter with Chandler Harnish. Yeah, it couldn't be Andrew Luck, it had to be Chandler Harnish. Dr. Joya, as we continue on with this conversation, what has stood out to you the most from what the president has said, from what you've heard on this panel, or something that you want to interject and for the audience to take away from our conversation today, which has been wide-ranging and very, very important?
Well, I think that what we're learning is this. Really attacking this problem of brain injury in children is really a partnership. It's a partnership between what the governmental agencies can provide and really what the private world can provide. And what we've got to do is ultimately pull together our best resources, and where it really comes down to what we do on the field. As scientists, what we're trying to do is to refine and translate that information to what we do on the field and in the classroom. So I think that our research ultimately helps to refine the process. Certainly when we look at a program like USA Football that is now trying to understand its risk areas. What is the contact that may put a youngster at risk, and how can we modify that? Right now, we're making our best efforts based on the evidence that we have, but we know we need a lot more information. And so, as we're hearing about these public-private partnerships funding our knowledge and translating it now down to the field, I think that's the critical component. And I know there are many other organizations that are very, very interested in this area, whether it's what we call the PABI plan, the Pediatric Acquired Brain Injury Plan, that is put out a national plan. We have Dr. Satcher's National Council on Youth Sports Safety that is addressing this issue and going around the country with the messaging. I think it's ultimately pulling all of these resources together that allow us to hit each community and, number one, provide education to parents, education to the youth sports organizations, and ultimately to the kids.
But to put it in a nutshell, you got to get the mom vote.
That is very
That's all,
important.
you gotta
We
get the
dads
mom
know that.
vote.
We have to have the mom vote. Absolutely.
And how's that working for you?
Actually, quite honestly, the moms are, when they're educated and they look at the risks of what are the problems otherwise, they start to, see that maybe there is something they can take charge of. Our moms take charge. We know that as dads. And to put this information in their hands to be in charge, I think is a critical thing we need to do.
I want to get back to Heads Up program. The coaches have to now be certified, or parents can look into something like Heads Up and see what the recommendations are, and to make sure these coaches are certified, which means they've had to go through a particular set of requirements themselves. It's not just, hey, here's the coach, and throw your kid out there. Just tell us a little bit more about that and why it's more advanced than it used to be before.
Well, again, with knowledge comes responsibility. So now that it's understood that this is something that is plaguing the sport, this is a proactive approach. So it's not just about teaching the fundamentals of how to tackle. Those who know and understand tackling know that there's no perfect way of tackling. It doesn't exist. So what you can do is best prepare someone to make contact the right way on a field. So
LeVar, if you just want to make a tackle, kids they're not thinking about, okay, I've got to have my head this way and I got to have my pads this way. They just want to get the guy down.
if they're not being taught, I think we're all creatures of habit, and so I've been training in this space and been working in this space for so long. I train 5-year-old kids. My son can probably tackle better than most guys in the National Football League right now. And he's 7, just turned 7. Well, that's true. That's true.
But what LeVar is saying is,
But it's about raising their awareness. I think in a way we treat our children almost like they're objects or their possessions. You're not giving them enough credit or enough respect for what they're capable of doing. And so when you task them with goals and different things that you're training them to do, they do it. It's no different than, if that's the case, then why do we send our children to school if you can't teach them? So it is about teaching them, and not just about teaching on the field, but understanding that this is a culture. There's a certain standard in how you should approach what you're doing in athletics. And so when you look at what Heads Up Football is doing, they're creating a standard so that not only the kids are learning how to do it properly, but the people who are teaching them know how to teach it properly. But also, you mentioned earlier, how do we identify concussions and the symptoms? These coaches are being trained up on understanding and knowing that as well. So that should give you more confidence on taking your child out there, because they know they're going to be vigilant over if that child should be pulled out of that game or not, as opposed to someone who may not have that same type of background and training to know to do the right thing in that situation. So look, there's always going to be debates as to what's right and what's wrong. I am a proponent of supporting any foundation, any type of group that is being proactive about this. That is the key, people, is to be proactive. There's so much reaction going on. That's all we hear. Oh, the concussions. Oh, the concussions. What's going to happen? Like, let's be proactive about it. Let's not walk in a corner and say, I got a concussion, or if I do this, I'm going to get a concussion, so I'm not going to do anything at all. It's about being proactive, and I think that's what Heads Up is doing. They're being very proactive in how they're approaching this very real and complex issue.
Dr. Joya, I think you wanted to add?
no, I think LeVar really has stated that it's really a curriculum. Coaches are teachers, but as dads and moms, as we walk into this supporting our kids, we may not always appreciate that. But if you've got a sport, and let's move beyond football, we can look at lacrosse, we can look at soccer, we can look at rugby, we can look at field hockey, volleyball, you name it. Ice hockey is actually a very good example of how they train their coaches really in the curriculum of teaching kids. And I think that's ultimately what it's all about. And as we have taken our understanding of brain science, which still has a lot to evolve, as Dr. Collins knows, but we begin to apply that toward the sporting world, we can begin to see how we might actually teach the skill in a different way that reduces that risk. It won't eliminate it, but at least it reduces the risk. So I think youth sports need to look at themselves as another form of school with coaches as teachers, but having the right curriculum in place and knowing how to reduce risk.
Taylor, do you think we've had a bit of hysteria enter the conversations as we talk about these,
Yeah, a little
these
bit.
various sports?
I think rightfully so. I'm not a parent, so I find it very difficult to tell a parent what's right or what's wrong in that aspect. And for what you read, and I'm also in the media, so with what you read in the media isn't necessarily true, but I find it very interesting to the others up here, all saying valid points. LeVar said something very interesting. You asked him about credentials. For 18 months, I went around emergency rooms on my own, in disguise a little bit. And we heard President Obama talk about 250,000 traumatic brain injuries, and they're going to emergency rooms. I was cleared, describing different symptoms every time. I was cleared 10 out of 10 times, 10 different states, to return to play in 48 hours. So right there, and I use that as an example, you know, if you got a broken foot, you don't go see an eye doctor. And that's not disrespectful to emergency rooms because they want to get you in, get you out. But this is why, mom and dads, the only thing I'm going to tell you is you need to be educated. In the state championship in 6th grade, hate to tell you, it's not the most important thing your kid's going to do in life. But how many times I hear it's the state championship, take 2 Tylenol and some orange juice. No, it doesn't, just get in there. It doesn't work anymore. So that hysteria is set in a little bit. But we're still very naive in decisions we're making because the Levine family said it best. Cheryl, correct? See, that's pretty good. Concussion guy remembered something. That was 10 minutes ago. You've only got one brain. We've only got one ticket at this. And anyone that comes to our foundation, you only got one ticket in life. If it's a knee, ankle, arm, I don't care. Go ahead. You can have surgery. You can fix that. I can't have surgery on my brain. So we really need to maybe give into the hysteria a little bit and really become immersed in being educated and very proactive, because I'll tell you right now, soccer is going to be around. We're just going to evolve. We're going to evolve with rules and laws and certain things like that, but soccer ain't going anywhere. Football shouldn't go anywhere. And ironically for girls, cheerleading is right behind soccer and concussions. So there's a lot of things. Pam, I want to end this, though, by asking you a question, because I don't find it ironic that you're sitting up here asking us questions about concussions, yet I'm watching NFL on Fox, Green Bay, correct? Where were you?
I was in New York.
New York. The ball hit you on the back of the head.
Yeah.
Describe what you felt like, because this isn't just a sports thing.
I don't remember much of it, but it was quite a blow. I had my head turned so, and football comes at a high velocity and sort of hits me in the cheek, and it just happened so fast. I wondered, where was he throwing the ball? Where are you throwing the ball?
See, that's a good reporter.
There was no
That's a good
receiver
reporter.
within 10
That's a
yards
good
of the
reporter.
pass. Where were you throwing that ball, Chandler Harnish? This little boy sent out a text. It's like, that's why he's a third-string quarterback. I felt so bad for him. But I went through all of the stages that you talked about. But I did the whole game. I said, I'm not stopping the game. I'm going to go through this whole game. And by the 4th quarter, I didn't know Justin Tuck from Justin Bieber. I couldn't figure out who this guy was. Everything was out of order. And then by the time I got back to the hotel,
How scared were you?
I was very scared. I was afraid to go to sleep. I would have the front desk call up every 2 hours. I just wanted to get home. And it was the whole thing with the sensitivity to light. This I'm not crazy about. If that guy could just turn that thing down a little bit, that would be fantastic. But
that's
you
the
go through
hysteria
same
you're
things,
talking
yes.
about, correct?
Yes.
And
I
that's
understand
what.
this conversation
That's why I
completely.
bring up the Junior Seau story. It's not to scare people, but we have to somehow get everyone's attention here a little bit. You're talking about a sideline reporter, a very good one on Fox and NFL, and she's dealing with the same stuff I dealt with. It's not just athletes. Someone in this room could fall out of their chair and hit their head, and actually not hit their head and still have post-concussion syndrome. So I do believe we should buy into the hysteria to round this into, but education, we became much more educated on smoking and started making better decisions. So if we're more educated on concussions.
Yeah, actually, I'd love to add to this conversation because I think it's so important, that 250,000 number that the president spoke of. When you actually look at that, the first activity that the children were doing that sustained injuries was actually riding bicycles. And other activities, yes, football, soccer definitely contributed, but other activities that contributed more than 10% to that 250,000 number were sledding, riding horses, playing on playground equipment. So I know we're here talking sports today because sports groups, quite frankly, have been taking the lead on this issue. But all parents should be aware of the signs and symptoms of a concussion, the importance of this issue, and the need to have their child seen by an appropriate medical care provider if they are injured, because every physical activity entails some risk of injury.
Yeah, and I think as you're being asked about your injury, the question is, did you know what was going on at that point? Did you have a resource to go to sort of have your WebMD, and that may or may not be as actively available to you. I mean, I think the key here is, again, we want parents and we want coaches to know that there is information and there are tools to help them define this problem that is actually not visible, which is then the symptomatology, and having a tool, whether it's, we've used our smartphone app for that, but you can use your pocket guide from the CDC to say these signs and these symptoms are suspected as concussion. Most importantly, though, where do I go as a medical or for a medical provider to now help define this further? And that is another part, you're mentioning it here, Taylor, that we have to work on, which is upping the education and the skill set of our medical providers. But we're getting better. We are clearly getting better. Pediatricians are becoming better educated on this. But I think that parents having the resource to know I can define it and I know what to do next is a key recipe that we have to get across the country.
General, having the weight of the president behind this, it's not a bad thing.
Having the weight of the president behind anything is not a bad thing. But I think, see, the important part of this is understanding that if we tackle this, we can make progress. And I think that's the point of this. I was sitting here as they were just talking. Education is not also just about parents or coaches. For the military, it's my platoon leaders, my platoon sergeants, my section chiefs. They got to be able to recognize this and understand that they have a problem, and that goes throughout work incidents. I wonder how many work incidents there are. So this is a total education of the American population that we have to do on this, because it is a simple thing that can be fixed, but if it's not recognized, it continues to degrade. It can get worse, and it can be something else could happen, and you don't even know it. And then we're far down the road on this, and then you finally maybe figure it out. So for me, the education piece is the key. And I think the awareness is first. It's okay to have a concussion. My guess is a lot of people in this room have had a concussion in their life. A lot. And I think you have to understand that, and that it's a common practice. And so we all have to understand that we have to take care of it right away and not be afraid to come forward when you have it. And then people have to understand and not say, oh, don't worry about it. You just had a small hit on your head. Get back out there or continue to work or go drive home or whatever, instead of saying, let's take a look at this and understand what has to be done. So for me, that's the key, and that's what the president's backing does. He's trying to make sure that we all are aware of this problem. Because again, I think the unfortunate thing here is if we don't get educated, then kids are going to stop playing soccer. They're going to stop playing football. They're going to stop playing lacrosse. They're going to stop playing baseball and softball, and because they're going to be afraid. And that would be terrible for our society. That'd be terrible for our young people. And it'd be terrible, that they don't have the opportunity to participate in what I consider to be something that can form you as an individual and stay with you for the rest of your life.
Any final remarks, briefly, from our
Just one point.
I love him.
I do get long-winded. I can speak. I do a radio show, so
I know it. That's what I'm worried about.
I talk a lot. I just want to raise a point of a matter of convenience as well. I think if you're, as a parent, if you're very busy, it's one of those things, it's kind of process of elimination sometimes. I think we have to be mindful of those things as well. When you think about the fact, my daughter plays on my flag team, and no offense to you, man, but she's our best player, all right? It's my daughter. So interestingly enough, she plays lacrosse, she plays basketball, she plays soccer, and she plays flag football. That's 4 sports that her mom has to drive her to all the time. So let's not make this a matter of convenience. And I mean that to say, okay, you get concussions playing football. I don't need to educate myself on it. I'm just not going to add that to my work list. It's a very real deal in terms of time. It's what you invest in your kids is what you will ultimately get out of them. Believing in your kids, supporting them, taking them around, and helping them, and you being as much a part of the solution as that coach that you're delivering your child to plays a major part. So it's going to take a team effort, and don't make it a matter of convenience. If your child wants to be active in a sport, I don't recall my dad or my mother ever forcing me to play a sport. The sports that I played were sports that I asked to play. And I would assume that's what it is most times for us who have played sports. So don't make it a matter of convenience. Please, be a team player. It might not be convenient. It might not be what you want to do on your Saturday afternoon, but it will pay off. It will pay dividends to invest that time. Even with all these things being said, this is our friend. This knowledge is our friend. Knowing more now is a bonus. It's a positive. This is not a negative. So let's not spin this as a negative. This is not, let's all meet and talk about how negative this is. This is a bonus that we are now having these conversations that will help these type of situations in the future. I hope that wasn't too long.
No, that was poignant.
Thank you.
Taylor?
5 years ago, 6 years ago, I'd never thought the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life is now my greatest gift. Yet, talking about my story, I feel very honored today to listen to Tori talk about her story. At a very young age, I feel very honored and privileged. I just think it needs to be said that you are grown up enough to take something that's very difficult in your life and to speak up about it. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. I think it's a great example for everyone in this room.
General?
I think I have my say, so
Okay.
I'll pass it on.
Dr. Comstock?
Well, first, I appreciate the effort by this administration and so many of the people in this room to do more in this area. And I just want to reiterate again that I hope no parent will be afraid from anything they heard today. We need more kids to play more sports, but we need all of us adults to work together to make those sports as safe as possible for them to play.
Last but not least.
Last but not least, I think, Dawn, you made a good comment. This audience here is here for a purpose, and no doubt is passionate both about sports and about safety. We have information, we have knowledge available to us, and it really is our responsibility as a society to make that available and to prepare parents and coaches in our youth sports leagues to implement that information as totally as we can. And I think it's, again, the process of how we coordinate that and how we really do work together in getting that through all sports and really through all child physical activity. We have the information, now it's time to do some work to put it in place.
And
One more thing, Pam.
Sure.
No,
Oh,
I'm joking.
I
I'm
was-
joking.
Why am I not surprised?
I'm joking. That was comic relief,
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, you keep talking, LeVar. We'll be outside. But Taylor sort of stole this from me. But Tori, I also wanted to compliment you for being such a poised young lady. I was a student athlete as well, and I can't tell you just how important that was for me. If I had not had sports, I don't think I'd be where I am today. And I think you're brave, and best of luck to you. And I think you represent so many young girls out there in such a positive way. And let's let our kids play sports. Thank you.